Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means and that's Stefan Krajisnik, and this is your Thursday pod. We evolved the textures with this one, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. I asked our textures a very, very simple question. 2-week free trial, man. Stay with us here. Let's assume every possible player returning in college football is available for the Ohio State to add to its roster this offseason for a second, based on what this team potentially needs, or just because you want them. Because, listen, you're fans. You're allowed to just go, I want this guy simply because I want him. Who would you add to this roster? I said, give me an offensive player and a defensive player. And also, Stefan, I think we're going to do a wild card spot just so I think for us, because this is what we do professionally, we should probably implement needs, which is why I also gave the wild card, because there's where we can give our want of, like, I just want to see what this dude looks like in Scarlet. Offense or defense more difficult in terms of finding a guy that Ohio State 100% needed to add to its run, in terms of what he is, in terms of what position he plays?
I would probably say, I think defense was probably easier because I do think there is one kind of glaring hole of where they could use some help.
Okay, so let's start with the easier one then. You added a defensive tackle, I'm presuming.
Yeah, I went with Peter Woods from Clemson.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty good defensive tackles kind of all across the country. Name is slipping my mind. I think Oregon has a pretty good one, if I'm not mistaken. I think Peter Woods is the best of the bunch, though. He's a guy who I think has potential to be a very high first-round pick. So what was interesting here, too, is like the pretense to all of this is that both of us agree Caden McDonald and Edric Houston are very good. So what does Ohio State need is a number 3 defensive tackle, probably more than anything. But if I get to pick anyone I want, I'll take Peter Woods and I'll figure out which one of those 3 is my number 3. Like we'll make it work. We'll figure it out from there. So he was kind of that position was kind of my easiest. I'll go here. And then, as I was going through the names, she had some options, but Peter Woods from Clemson is who I ended up.
So Peter Woods, Clemson defensive tackle. The last 2 years, he's had 54 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and he's forced 2 fumbles. He had 20 pressures last year, and he had 20 pressures the year before that. That's consistency, man. 20 pressures each. But it's not necessarily in the counting numbers with Peter Woods. It's the fact that he's 6'3", 315 pounds, and Ohio State doesn't know how it's going to stop the run, and Peter Woods is going to help you stop the run.
Yeah, and kind of more of a proven commodity than some too. Like he's got some experience. There's some guys, as I was looking around the country, finding some best defensive tackles, there was a lot of, all right, this guy's next up. This guy's due for breakout year. And I kind of wanted to find who was, the most surefire option. And like you said, you mentioned some of those numbers last year. He's got he's got experience. That's kind of what maybe pulled him over compared to some others is I know what I'm getting from him, like 100%. I know what I'm getting from Peter Woods. And I think that's probably what Ohio State would want at this point. Because Caden McDonald and Edric Houston, as much as we like them, they are stepping into bigger roles than we've ever seen them play before.
Peter Woods was very popular amongst our texters, 614-350-3315. He wasn't the only defensive tackle that got named, but from the 440 on defense, Clemson defensive tackle, Peter Woods. from the 4-3-4. I think this is a great question to ask the listeners. Good job, Steven. I'll say what he said for offense. But on defense, I would pick either Caleb Banks or Peter Woods. Both would provide great depth to the defensive tackle position and experience. If OSU didn't land the North Carolina transfer, then Colin Simmons would be the person I wanted. Supposedly, he was the best freshman last year, but we all know who that was. The question I want to pose for you all from last year's team: who would you want back for this year's team? My pick for the defense would be Tyleek, and on the offense, it would be Will and Seth. Will and Seth can improve their draft stock heavily if they could come back. Is Tyleek the answer? Then if Peter Woods is our answer for like guys who are in college football right now to add to the roster, is Tyleek like the bar none? I definitely want that guy back in 2025. Or is there a case for between him and Ty Hamilton? I know Tyleek's the better football player. I know that's the first round draft pick, but I almost am inclined to say Ty Hamilton because he's a nose, and that's maybe what they have less of at Ohio State than necessarily what Tyleek is. Like they have Caden McDonald and Edric Houston. I'm not worried about their ability to get after the passer, but Ty Hamilton's ability to eat up double teams, I feel like might be more valuable for this team, even if it's not the better player.
Yeah, I actually think I'd probably agree with you. I think with what this roster has, Ty Hamilton would probably be more of a fit. If we were talking, anyone, then, guys like Mason Graham start to enter this conversation. But if we're talking specifically Ohio State guys, yeah, I'd probably lean Ty Hamilton, but also like if you give me Tyleek, we'll make it work. We'll figure it out. He's a first round pick.
If you give me a first round draft pick, I'll figure it out. Aaron from Chicago for defense, defensive tackle. Tim Keenan from Alabama. He's big/quick and can plug up the middle to slow down the run, which is what I'm talking about. Tim Keenan, because even with Peter Woods, that's more Tyleek than it is Ty Hamilton. Peter Woods is 6'2", 326 pounds, and he had 40 tackles and 2.5 sacks last year at 6'2", 326 pounds. That's what they need. They need a dude who's just going to eat up double teams and just swallow everybody. And then Sonny Styles and Arvo Reese can go get tackles, because I don't know if they have that right now. Did you have any consideration to any other people from the 304? They mentioned Elijah Griffin, defensive tackle from Georgia. I'm all in for bringing defensive linemen from Georgia here. Did you think of any other names? Or was it just like, I'm just going to not write a defensive tackle's name down, we're going to roll it?
There were some names I thought about because I debated, do I go position of need or do I go just like strengthen the hell out of one position and we'll figure out the rest? I wrote down Dylan Stewart, the edge rusher from South Carolina, as an option. I think it's actually low-key kind of a loaded 2025 of returning edge rushers, like guys who played a good bit last year. Not necessarily guys who are like stepping into new roles. Dylan Stewart obviously having the big season that he had at such a young age. I think he's the best edge rusher returning in college football. I did see a kind of a top 100 or whatever it was ranking of players in college football for 2025. And the number one defensive player was actually Dylan Stewart. He was one spot ahead of Caleb Downs, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think if we're talking edge rushers, I'm taking Dylan Stewart, and I'm just being like, sure, we might be a little thin at tackle. We're going to need a guy to step up to be that third or fourth guy. But also, like, Kenyatta and Caden, also, like, we think they're going to be great, but they haven't been in this role yet. So you give me a guy like Dylan Stewart, and maybe that means you take out Bo Atkinson. That's fine. I'll take Dylan Stewart over Bo Atkinson. And that way I know that if Kenyatta or Caden, if one of them doesn't take that next step, I got a dude who's proven, who's going to be a monster at defensive end. So I thought about doing Dylan Stewart, but I ended up going with Peter Woods because I just think that the tackle depth is so thin at this point.
From the 419, this is an interesting question because we already have the top two players in the country, so it's really adding depth, right? There's no one who seems like an absolute need to improve the team, but I guess maybe someone like Dylan Stewart would be nice to have. Overall, it feels like OSU has one of the best rosters in the country again, so it's hard to even think of someone to add. I cannot think of anyone on offense to add. We're not going to name this person, but they also said Dallin Hayden as the offensive guy, just as another running back. Though Ryan Day seems very, very excited about the running back depth this year. Ryan Day seems very excited about a lot of the skill position spots this year. The way he talked about We have a lot of different styles of wide receivers. This might be the deepest tight end room that we've had. The offensive line seems to be coming together strong and they're building depth. You've got 4 or 5 running backs that they feel like they might be able to depend on by the time the season starts. And if they can just figure out quarterback, it does seem like from an offensive standpoint, things are maybe a little bit stronger. Dylan Stewart, 23 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles last season.
Was he injured for a little bit, or was it just Sellers that was injured?
I think it was just Sellers that was injured. But yeah, Dylan Stewart looks like Chase Young. I'm just going to be honest with you. And they really wanted him out of high school. Yeah, that's. And wasn't there a point? I know there was like some chatter of like, hey, is he going to hop in a transfer portal after the 2024 season? Then he shut that down immediately. I love how people announce how they're not going in the transfer portal now. It's just essentially like, hey, I signed a new deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure there was a report out there that he like almost thought about the portal, and then South Carolina gave him a bag, if I remember correctly. The Dylan Stewart thing, I guess, like you can rationalize picking him here, and then when we talk about the offensive side of the ball, like a running back, because you and I, along with a lot of people in the program, are very high on James Peoples, Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, like what they can do. But not everyone is going to agree with us. So if you're sitting at home being like, I don't know if Caden Curry is going to have the breakout year that everyone's thinking, then in your head, Dylan Stewart makes a lot of sense, right? Just like you could be telling yourself, okay, yeah, there's not a lot behind Edric and Caden, but at least I trust those two guys. I don't know if I trust Kenyatta and Caden Curry. That's why I want to go out and get a Dylan Stewart. So if you're in that boat of you're not 100% trusting that one of these guys is going to take a step forward that we project as a starter, I get it. If you're not high on Brandon Inniss, maybe you have a guy, maybe you have a slot receiver out there that you really like that you'd want to bring in, right? Like there are options to this where Ohio State has a lot of guys who maybe you and I are assuming are gonna be fine as they step into starter roles, or maybe some of the texters or some Ohio State fans just are telling themselves like, I don't know if I believe it yet. I'd rather go out and get a Dylan Stewart than trust a Caden Curry.
What positions are you more likely to just trust what they have on the roster regardless? Like, there's a lot of position groups here this year where it feels like it's not proven guys, but you're just kind of trusting the concept of what it might be. How many position groups are you 100% not worried about? Both sides of the ball, right?
Yeah, I mean, wide receiver, they do have somewhat proven commodities, but still, like, even if it was 3 freshmen starting, I think at this point I would just trust it. So definitely wide receiver. I lean that way. Quarterback, I know that's always a hot topic, but I kind of trust whoever is a quarterback for Ohio State to be pretty decent. At this point, I'm probably there at corner with just what they've been able to do last couple of years and in recruiting as well. So those are probably the corner, quarterback, and receiver are probably the 3 where I have very little doubt.
Receiver Brandon Inniss would have to be so far off what we think he is for me to think it's not going to be fine. I think quarterback, the floor is just so high at this point at that position. What's the worst quarterback they've had won a national championship? The second worst quarterback they've had his only loss is to the team who won the national championship. Now, I understand it's the context of that's also your rival, so you can't dismiss that. But still, that's the floor of those rooms. The floor of quarterback play at Ohio State is you get drafted. So until that's not the floor again, with all due respect to JT Barrett, until that's not the floor, until you're back to JT Barrett level quarterback play, then you just trust it. Especially when you think the guys that they're going to be getting the ball to, their floors are even higher than that. Like the floor of the wide receiver room is the number 20 pick in the NFL draft, which was wide receiver 1 that year, right? The floor of the running back room seems pretty high with Carlos Loughlin in charge. I mean, Max Clare is going to be awesome here. We just don't know how often he gets to be awesome because they have so many weapons to get the ball here. And I think the lowest floor is probably the offensive line just because they're not necessarily a consistently proven commodity over the entire day era. But even then, there's enough names there for you to feel at least a level of comfortability. But I'll say offensively, wide receiver for sure, quarterback. I don't know if I'm all the way there yet with corner yet. Because Jermaine Matthews to me is a step higher than Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, where we know you can do it. With Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, hey, I think you can do it, but can you do it for 50 plus snaps? I know Jermaine Matthews can do it for 50 plus snaps. Can he do it for 16 games at 50-plus snaps per game? Because he's never really done that, which I understand is nitpicky. But I'll say wide receiver and quarterback for sure. I mean, if Ohio State thought Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry were 100% ready to do this, do you think they would have added Bo Atkinson? Which is back to the point of with Dylan Stewart. I think they're both fine players. I think Bo Atkinson is a fine player. If Dylan Stewart had hopped in the portal Friday afternoon before it closed, that's what we'd be potting about right now. The 10 reasons Ohio State needs to bring Dylan Stewart to Columbus no matter the cost. Because it's a combination of Ohio State's wide receiver room, their floor is high, but also their ceiling is supernova. Ohio State's quarterback room, the floor is high and the ceiling is supernova. I don't know if anybody else can say that, where the floor is high and the ceiling is supernova. So because of that, I'll say, because you said Peter Woods, and so we don't have a weird conversation about Peter Woods for another 20 minutes here, I'll say that if Dylan Stewart had hopped in the portal, I think that Larry Johnson needs to be on the first thing smoking down to D.C. to go see Dylan Stewart and go, hey, remember Chase? You look like him. Come beat him for us again. Come beat Chase. We'll even give you number 2. You got great hair out, though. Get you some nice dreadlocks. But come beat Chase Young 2.0.
Was there any part of you that wanted to go safety?
Yes. From the 4-4-0, on defense, Clemson, defensive tackle Peter Woods, or Minnesota safety Coy Parrish. Coy Parrish, Ohio State recruited him out of high school. He just didn't flip off of that Minnesota commitment. So kudos for PJ Fleck. Coy Parrish will not only fill the Lathan Ransom void and be an awesome safety, but he's an electric return man on special teams. I don't know if they necessarily need that because, Caleb Downs is pretty good there. But yes, I did think heavily about Coy Parrish. There was a reason why back in the winter, Stefan, when Dylan Thiemann, the other Purdue transfer, hopped in the portal, we were like, Ohio State should probably go get this guy because, again, I'll throw Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain in the Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, Jermaine Matthews boat up. We think you're going to be good. But if you're not 100% sure, there's nothing wrong with exploring what's out there.
Yeah, that's why when you brought up, would you want Tyleek or Ty if you could bring back anyone? There was part of me that was like, well, what about Lathan?
Yeah, I think Lathan would actually be. It would be because everybody else is raising a ceiling. Those 3 are raising a ceiling and raising a floor. Okay, so that's defense. There was, again, our Texans really want Peter Woods to be an Ohio State Buckeye in this hypothetical world. I mean, maybe in real life too, hypothetical world. Another guy from the 859, Murad Watson, from out of Syracuse, the transfer from Syracuse. I think he ended up committing somewhere though. He's committed to Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Yeah, Texas. And
every defensive tackle in the country is playing for Texas.
Yeah.
How you got to spend $40 million somehow.
From the 810, he says Anthony Hill Jr., the Texas linebacker / edge rusher. I think he's pretty good. And then a lot of other Peter Woods talk. Okay, so let's take a break then, because it just seems like this is going to turn into a more of a conversation about defensive tackle, which I don't think there's a guy of that caliber in the transfer portal. And I know a guy from Oklahoma State just went in the transfer portal recently. Let's see what Ohio State thinks. I would assume that they're evaluating him to see what happens there. But I don't think right now there is a guy in the portal at defensive tackle who is better than Jason Moore and Tywan Malone, which is why it goes back to Jason Moore and Tywan Malone have to turn into something over the next 3 months here between now and August 30th. They have to, because there's not other options, at least not options where Ohio State should realistically be considering those options.
I agree.
No, you froze. That's all it was. Okay, so let's take a break, and then we'll flip over to the offensive side and also talk about some wild cards. Just get a little funky with this here on Buckeye Talk.
Hey there, I'm David Harbour from Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts. I don't mean to interrupt your favorite podcast. Well, actually, maybe I do, just a little bit, but I have a good reason. My new film hits theaters Friday, May 2nd, and it's got everything. Action, suspense, humor, heart, and Bob. Who's Bob? Find out by getting tickets now. Okay, now back to the show, or on to the next ad.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at graduate hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre al app para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik. We are listing if Ohio State, in this hypothetical world where Ohio State could just go into a school, take a player, plop him on the roster, no consequences, no rules, in a world where there's already no rules, who would they take on defense? It just seemed to center around a lot of defensive tackle talk, maybe some safety talk, and some just defensive line and safety talk in general. On offense, Stefan, Spencer Fano from Utah is and Caden Proctor are at the top of my list.
I went with Proctor, but Fano is probably option B if I were to list him like that.
Fano played 770 snaps last year at Utah. He played 400 blocking snaps, and he gave up 1 sack. In 2 years, he's had 717 pass blocking snaps, and he's given up 3 sacks. Caden Proctor, former 5-star recruit out of Iowa, was committed to Iowa and then flipped to Alabama, and then he transferred to Iowa, and then he transferred back to Alabama.
As one does.
Yeah, logical things to do. In 2 years as a starting left tackle, he's played 731 pass blocking snaps. He's given up 15 sacks, but 12 of those came when he was a true freshman. He only gave up 3 last year because true freshmen are not supposed to be starting on the offensive line. And that's why. You see what happens after he's had a full year in the program with 4 months there where he took a little recess and went home to Iowa. You see what happened. 9 less sacks. And so you're maybe expecting him to grow on that. From the 4-3-4, this was the other part of what they had to say. For offense, I would say Caden Proctor. I'm not sure if he plays right tackle or left tackle, but I would be inclined to put him at left tackle at Ohio State. I don't think the offensive line will be a question mark this year at all, but having Proctor would solidify that group. Other names I thought about were Nussmeier from LSU, solely based on his build. And then for defense, it would either be Caleb Banks or Peter Woods. Both would provide great depth at defensive tackle position and experience. If OSU didn't land the UNC transfer, then Colin Simmons. Okay, we read the rest of that already. Okay, cool. Is this just Rich getting richer offensively? Like, did Ohio State need anything offensively from the portal? And I know they brought in Justin Terry, but that's a depth piece. Did they need a plug and play on offense at all?
Probably not. The way I kind of viewed this was I even looked at the winter portal a bit, and I thought to myself, if you went out and got Ethan Owinyawa because you needed a starting left tackle, well, what if I just went out and got you a better left tackle? And that's where I went with Caden Proctor. Because I think Ethan Owinyawa is going to be good, but that's like, okay, this guy's got to take that next step. That's the path, right? Like, he's got to take that next step at a higher level of competition. Give me a guy who's done it in the SEC, and I'd rather have that as the surefire, like, first-round pick. That's what Proctor projects out to be, which is funny because in a lot of projections and a lot of player rankings, it seems like everyone thinks Isaiah World is probably the best tackle in college football and is going to be the highest drafted guy. I'll take the guy who's done it at Alabama a few years. World came over from Nevada. So it's like, if I'm taking out Ethan Owinyawa because I'd rather have a guy who's done it at the Power 5 level, give me a guy who's done it at the Power 5 level. So that's where I'm going with. That's where I went with Caden Proctor.
Quarterback.
Wild card. It's kind of where I had that.
Okay, so let's get there. Okay, cool.
You want to just do it?
Yes, quarterback talk. Because like none of us are mentioning like Ryan Williams or any of those second-year wide receivers, that loaded 2024 wide receiver class where it's like, that's why I said what I said earlier. Carnell Tate's probably going to be a first-round draft pick. You're not worried about your Z receiver. you have an alien playing X receiver. So you're not worried there. The number 19 pick in the NFL draft just told me that the guy who's taking over for his spot's going to be pretty good. So I'm not worried about I'm not worried about it at all. So this comes back to, I don't know if there's an elite running back in college football right now. I think you're seeing a little bit of a churn. So I think who's the best running back returning in college football right now, I don't really know off the top of my head. Maybe it's
Jeremiah Love.
Probably Jeremiah Love, and then probably after that, like Singleton and Katron Allen at Penn State and whatnot. But Jeremiah Love's great. I don't think he's going to bring anything that I don't expect Jenks Peoples and C.J. Donaldson to be able to do. And the same thing about the Penn State pairing. So this comes back to quarterback.
It would be different at running back if Ohio State was kind of like a one-back workhorse.
Yes.
Like if it was like a J.K. Dobbins situation and then J.K. like rolled his ankle, I'd be like, okay, you have to go get Jeremiah Love. Now it's like, I don't need Jeremiah Love in a two-back system.
No.
You'll take it, but I don't think that's a glaring need.
One more person I want to name, Mateo Uyunglele from Oregon, just as a defensive lineman. I think he's the best edge rusher in the Big. Before Ohio State played 16 games, he led the Big Ten in sacks this past year.
Yeah, he was a popular pick for some of the Texters.
Yeah. Okay, so quarterbacks.
So the quarterback thing is interesting because I think it comes down to like who you like. Like everyone thinks Nussmeier is going to be good. I'm not sold on him, so I don't have him on here. I don't know if I'm completely sold on what Arch Manning is going to be, so I didn't have him on my list.
Can I read a text real quick? Now that you've brought up Arch's name, from Scott in Charleston, South Carolina. On offense, well, no, I'll start with the defensive side. On defense, KJ Bolden, the safety from Georgia. He's no Caleb Downs, but he would be the second best safety on the team. KJ Bolden, Ohio State recruited him as a 5-star recruit at high school. He was actually the former safety coach, Perry Eliano's cousin. So there was a point where it seemed like Ohio State might have a chance to win that battle. Florida State ends up winning that battle, and he flips to Georgia later on in the cycle. Special teams, Dominic Zvada, the kicker at Michigan. I want him for obvious reasons. Not only do I want a terrific kicker, which he is, but it denies Michigan another quality piece on its roster. That's called game planning. That's playing chess. But also, I don't know what it is. Michigan just finds these really good specialists, whether it's punters or kickers. They have figured that part of the game out. So I agree. I would take Michigan specialists.
Yeah.
Most years.
Their kicker, man, he's legit.
But it's every year they find these random dudes at kicker and punter, and then they just flip games. It's amazing. Offense, and this gets back to why I wanted to stop you. Arch Manning, I don't want him to start over Julian Sand. I just want to make him a water boy next year so that Texas doesn't have him on August 30th. Plan chess.
I like it.
So no quarterback?
So my wild card is DJ Lagway.
Okay.
He's
the best quarterback.
I think he's the best quarterback in the country. Yeah.
The best quarterback.
And I could see why you would say no, because if you're projecting, like Lagway did get a good amount of experience last year, obviously more than Julian Sand, but like there's a step he has to take. Julian Sand could take that step and be the best quarterback in college football. So I get if you have reservations. Like if you're someone who would rather go like the Cade Klubnik route, I get it. Like that's a guy who's done it, who started a ton. You know what you're getting. 100% get it. I had Klubnik on my list as well of potential guys. I just think if you give me a few months of DJ Lagway working with Ryan Day, like who's the best comp? Is it Haskins?
Probably. And he's not as tall as Haskins is.
Yeah.
Well, actually he is. He's 6'3".
He's not a super mobile guy.
Because he's big. He's 241.
Right. Like I'm looking at the rushing numbers and I'm like, he's kind of a pocket passer.
Yeah. I don't know why they have him playing at 240 pounds at 6'3", but this is why Napier runs the program. I don't care about his stats because I don't care that he only completed 59.9% of his passes for 1,915 yards and 12 touchdowns and 9. I don't care. Those are not great stats. I don't care because he's a true freshman who was playing in a pretty quality conference. It's the second best conference in college football.
The quality conference. That was good. That was good.
Thank you. I mean, it's a basketball conference. And Florida is not as good as the environment he would have played in if he was at Ohio State. From a weapon standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from a maybe facility standpoint, Florida stuff is pretty up to date. And Ohio State's due for some upgrades around them. They're not missing anything. they're just not. Ohio State's football facilities are like Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry. They're fine, but if Dylan Stewart hopped in the portal, you'd go get Dylan Stewart. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it is. They're due for not just some renovations, but for some, let's knock this thing down and build something brand new. And I do wonder, on the list of things that Ross Bjork needs to spend the next 5 to 10 years doing, where update the Woody Hayes athletic facility is on that list. But DJ, I think this is the best quarterback in college football. He's just he's a Porsche sitting in a trailer park, essentially. So what happens if you take the Porsche and give it to somebody who lives in a mansion and starts treating it like it's a Porsche? And I don't know if there's another quarterback I would take over Ohio State's quarterback room right now. And maybe that's the bubble me talking, but I just think for me, it's either this kid, because I just think he's the most talented quarterback in the country, or I'm just adding someone because they've played football before and the guys in the room haven't played football.
Yeah, my logic was if it was a guy who hasn't played a ton of football or like hasn't played any and is kind of just expected to take a big step, I think Arch Manning probably fits into that boat. I was fine just sticking with Julian Sayin. So that's why I went Lagway. I think one guy that would have been interesting that I would have considered, just because I would love to know how Ohio State would operate, because he is a bit more mobile, is Lenore Sellers. Because I do think he's good, and I do think he's a Heisman caliber type guy in 2025 who got a ton of playing time when he was healthy in 2024. I would love to see how he fit. Because he would probably be more in like, I don't know if he's as big as Justin, but it would be more like he's 6'3", 242, actually, almost the same as Lagway. But he's a lot more mobile. I mean, he had a game against Clemson with 166 rushing yards. Like, looking through some of his stats, like, you're getting 30, 40, 50 rush yards out of him pretty consistently. We haven't seen Ohio State with a like Will Howard was dual threat, but he didn't do it. He actually didn't end up doing a ton of it.
No,
like Lenore Sellers would do it a pretty good amount.
Yeah, he'd be the most mobile quarterback they'd had since Justin.
Yeah.
And even then, they didn't run a lot of designed runs for Justin, but it's the element of everybody's covered. I'm going to go pick up 30 yards. Element of this that they didn't really do with Will until the moment called for, which was like the Penn State game and then the national championship. Remember when they were running a QB power for like 7 plays straight in the national championship game, and you and I were looking at each other like, what is Ohio State doing?
Yeah, there was a point where we're like, are they going to lose this game?
Yeah. And then you look up, it's like, oh, the ball's going towards Jeremiah Smith, and he's 4 yards open down the field. All right. Well, congratulations, Ohio State. You're the new national champions. But I would say this. If they had Lenore Sellers, they'd be running the Justin Fields version of Ohio State's offense. If they had DJ Lagway, they'd be running the Dwayne Haskins version of the Ohio State offense. And what I mean by that is maybe more getting outside the pocket, bootlegs, play action. Maybe even you'd be cutting off one half of the field, right? And just kind of 1 or 2 reads. While with DJ Lagway, it's more like he's playing point guard. So you're seeing a lot more just full progression reads, that type of stuff here. And I think based on the weapons this year and what I think Julian Sayin is, and that's a point guard, DJ Lagway would seamlessly, if you dropped him into this personnel, fit it. Not saying that Lenore Sellers would fail with this person. I'd figure it out. But I think DJ Lagway's skill set, just like I think Julian Sayin's skill set, would better maximize this personnel that they have with Ohio State in 2025 than Lenore Sellers would, which is why I went DJ over Lenore's.
Yeah. I also just think DJ is the better quarterback. So if I'm picking 1A or 1B, I'll take 1A every time. I think, so let's see what happens at Florida, because they got a Heisman type guy at quarterback, and that can carry you some places, but that's a brutal schedule and a coach who just can't seem to quite figure it out yet. And I think he's running out of time.
Napier is still employed.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it.
How many guys can say that? How good are you? My coach still has a job. And he probably wouldn't have a job. Is there anybody else you want to bring up before we get out of here?
No, not for who would Ohio State at. I had an interesting question for maybe the rest of the college football world, if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
How many teams, if they went through this, would pick both Ohio State guys on offense and on defense?
Oh,
I think Caleb Downs. So Georgia probably not, because they have one pretty good safety to where maybe you would take a different spot on defense.
That may be true, but also they tried to get Caleb Downs out of the transfer portal last year. I think Bama would think about not doing it because they have, like, do they need Jeremiah Smith? I mean, they take him obviously if he wanted to come there, but do they need Jeremiah Smith when you got Ryan Williams? I don't know. Auburn is in a different situation. They've got Cam Coleman, who's very good, but they need weapons in general, so they probably would just pair the two and just have 2 6'3" outside wide receivers who are just dominating everybody.
Offense is tough though, because how many teams in the country would immediately take Cade Klubnik, Lenore Sellers, DJ Lagway?
Right. So
Ohio State's a different spot because you have a quarterback coach and you have a 5-star quarterback.
You're right. And so which teams don't have that?
Right. And I think most of them don't.
I mean,
like Indiana went out and got Mendoza, the Cal transfer, pretty good quarterback. If you gave them the option of Jeremiah Smith or like DJ Lagway, they're probably taking DJ Lagway.
Right. I think Alabama actually, because even Clemson would take Jeremiah Smith tomorrow, even with already having TJ Moore. I think Texas would take Jeremiah Smith, even though they've got Ryan Wingo because he's Jeremiah Smith. I mean, most of these teams, forget Jeremiah Smith, most of these teams are taking Riley Graham.
That's true.
I think Bama is the only one that would have hesitation about Jay. And some of that might just be they already have arguably the second best wide receiver in college football. But even because it's not like Ryan Williams had 1,000 yards last year. He kind of had like 3 big games and
also like
came back down to the mean as a normal freshman.
Like Bama probably more often than not feels pretty good about its offensive line. Like we went out and got Proctor. Like if you're feeling good on offensive line, then what, you're gonna add a running back or you're gonna add JJ?
That's fair. Would Bama take JJ or Julian Sand? They could only have one.
That's a good question. I mean, it seemed like DeBoer wasn't all that interested in saying when he got there.
Good point.
Keelan DeBoer had Julian Sand.
No, that's fair. No, that's
just kidding. Actually, I might be wrong. I don't know what the timeline was of Julian leaving and DeBoer actually getting hired, but
it was about the same. It's because his version is he didn't have a relationship with him, which is true. He did not recruit Julian Sand at Washington, but also Washington's not getting 5-star quarterbacks. So it goes hand in hand there. Well, we didn't have a relationship. Well, he wasn't necessarily at a program where you would have even looked his way anyway. But there also is an element too, because even Jalen Milroe doesn't fit the Kalen DeBoer style quarterback, which is why they've quickly pivoted back, which is why he brought the guy that was at Washington with him to Alabama with him. He's probably going to be a starter. You're probably right. It's JJ. I'm overthinking this. Yes. Every team would take JJ. And I think every team would just figure it out with Caleb Downs. But it's a fun conversation of who doesn't need JJ? Who doesn't need Caleb Downs? Because what you want and what you need aren't the same thing.
I just say, would Texas just take like Caden McDonald or Edric Houston and keep loading up at defensive tackle?
Yeah. It's like, Sark, you have 12 defensive tackles. Yeah, but we could use like 7 more. I'm fascinated to watch them play football. How many of these guys are going to play? They run a 3-4. So how many defensive tackles are the 3 down just going to be all defensive tackles?
You won't have, relatively speaking, you won't have to wait that long to find out.
That's true. I'll know by August 30th. And so will you. Get the text.
At halftime, I'm going to look over. Steven's going to be like a mad scientist crunching the numbers of defensive tackle snaps at Texas. And I'm like, dude, it's 14-14 in the fourth quarter. Look up.
Wait, chill. Snap count. No, that's funny. It's like, dude, it's 14-14. Can you engage here? And it's like, I can't. I got to figure out.
Hero Canoe is in for the 3rd time this game.
Yeah, I got to keep track of this stuff because it matters. That's what I'm going to be texting about. 614-350-3315. Julian Sand is going to throw a touchdown pass to take a 17-14 lead with 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And I'm going to be like, listen, Hero Canoe wasn't on that snap. And all we're going to get is a bunch of stop. It's 2-ball nowhere. Talk about the game, not Hero Canoe. But get the text. 614-350-3315. I'm not actually going to do that, I promise you. But we will be texting Insight. We're also starting something here. In fact, we started it yesterday afternoon. You're listening to this on Thursday. The text went out on Wednesday. I'll send out a couple of reminders, though. We are starting a concept of who is the greatest Ohio State Buckeye. And this isn't about best players. This isn't about, talent. This is about who captures the essence of what it means to be an Ohio State Buckeye the most. And it's a lot of it is centered around the idea of what Jack Sawyer just was this past year and really his entire career, and really his entire time associated with Ohio State from the moment he committed when he was 16 years old. We're trying to see where Jack Sawyer could fall on that scale, but we're also going to be talking, obviously, Woody Hayes and Archie Griffin and Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer and Orlando Pace on down the list there. So it's not just a like who's the best player list. It's a who captures the essence of what it means to be an Ohio State Buckeye. We have a grading system that we're going to do this off of, but right now we're just looking for names. So get the text 614-350-3315. Our categories are individual on-field accolades and stats. So that there is where they awesome as a player here. We've got team accolades. What did they do as a team? Which is, did you win championships? Did you make playoffs? What would you do in bowl games? What was your record and all that stuff? Memorable moments. So let's use Jack Sawyer as a gauge real quick. Where would you put Jack Sawyer's grade if you're talking about his individual accolades and stats as a Buckeye? Where would you put Jack Sawyer's grade in terms of what Ohio State as a team accomplished during the 4 years he was a Buckeye? Where would you do Jack Sawyer's most memorable moments, right? Would that be an A+ because of 83 yards through the heart of Texas and the interception against Michigan and what he did in the Cotton Bowl last year? What did they do against Michigan? He probably gets an F there because he never beat Michigan. But then there's the Buckeye aura. Like you look at that guy, when you think of that guy, you think Buckeye. Those are our categories, and we're looking for names. We're looking for people who you feel like should be considered in this conversation of who is the greatest Buckeye of all time. 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial. We're going to be engaging with our texters for this for the next couple of weeks here. And then in like 2 weeks, we're going to be revealing stuff through a bracket and try to figure out who the greatest Buckeye is. 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial. It's $3.99 after that. That's what we're doing going forward. So for Stefan Krajisnik, I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.